What's going on, guys? This is Martyrs Brigade 99 coming to you once again with another session of Dark Souls PvP. Alright guys, we're back at it again for another video in the Battle of the Build series. Alright, first and foremost, I'd like to give a shout out to good old MainG for putting forth an awesome demonstration. As a matter of fact, this is another one of those occasions where, I lose like 90% of the matches. Right? I lose a great deal of the matches. Which at times can be frustrating because, whenever I do the Battle of the Build series and I am using a build that is not one of my most used builds, I'm kind of crossed between frustrated with the build itself, or perhaps in a situation where I have to reevaluate my own tactics. Right, so we'll go ahead and get into that. Alright, so this is my Life Hunter build. Nothing really special about it. It's just a build that focuses on bleeding. Right? Now, the Life Hunter, the Life Hunt Scythe, in the event that you guys are not familiar, inflicts the most bleed buildup per hit. Right? Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that, well, actually, I guess it does. Now, the Gold Tracer builds bleed rather quickly. Right? But the Life Hunt Scythe, at least according to wiki spaces. Now you guys see that? Now we're going to talk about some of the cons of this build. And actually, let me just run into it real quick. One of the cons to this build is the rather low defense. After he hit me with that grand explosion, he could just kind of ask me like, holy camole, dude, I've never been able to do 1,000 damage with that attack. And that's one of the major flaws to this build. Even with 99 humanity, I only have like 280 defense. That's it, guys. 280 defense. And the thing about this build is, now, I've kind of exchanged views with a number of guys over this Blood Hunt Scythe. Right? And a lot of people will tell you, well, just use the blood shield, or they'll say, dude, you don't need the blood bite ring. Just kind of play as I do and you'll be okay. But see, the thing is, in order for this build to be effective, you have to play aggressively. That's the bottom line. You have to be aggressive with your attacks. Now, granted, if I had to play this build and recreate it, one difference that I would make is I would only have one Gold Tracer as opposed to two. Now, when I kind of thought about it, I said, you know what, that'd kind of be groovy if I had two Gold Tracers and I can R2 both of them, because it looks cool. Right? But in practice, it's kind of better for me to have one. And although some people would say, you guys see that damage? See? That's that low defense. And as a matter of fact, after playing this build, I know some people would say, dude, you could just use the Gold Tracer as a secondary weapon. You don't have to have one in the left hand. Yeah, but I want to do something different, right? And actually, I think keeping the Life Hunt Scythe in your right hand and then pulling out the Gold Tracer in your left kind of throws people off, because think about it. How many people are paying attention to your right hand weapons? A lot of people pay attention to it. I know I do. And as a matter of fact, that's some of the cues that I get. It's kind of like when I'm playing somebody and I notice that they have a secondary weapon. It's kind of like, okay, just look for the right hand switch. But not too many people will have a secondary weapon in their left hand. So that's why I thought it was a good idea. Also, the R2s with that left-handed Gold Tracer, that thing builds bleed pretty quickly. As a matter of fact, the first few matches I was pretty successful, but from then on, that guy just started using so many R2s of those strength weapons. I just really could not compete really couldn't compete with them. So let's talk about the pros. The pros to my builds, to the extent that you're able to play aggressively, for which you need to do with the Life Hunt Scythe, it can really build bleed pretty fast. Because if you guys notice, I am trying to, keep the pressure on my opponent, because for a lot of you guys that already know, the bleed is built not only with, and actually that was a bleed right there, 4,000 damage. The bleed is built not only with hits that connect, but also with blocked hits. Now, it may not necessarily be at the same rate of build up, but it still builds nonetheless. Alright, so that's a good thing. Now, I know some of the guys, I kind of read comments and they're like, dude, why not just use the Great Scythe? Well, like I said before, this build is all about inflicting bleed as quickly as I can. Now, the Great Scythe is cool, but it doesn't build bleed as quickly as the Life Hunt Scythe. Also, because I have to be aggressive with this build, because I heard some guys say, dude, you're wasting a slot on that blood bite ring. You don't need it. Well, see, the thing is, when I ask people to demonstrate it, right, because you have to be aggressive with these scythes, they ran into some of the same problems that I did, which is why I decided to use the blood bite ring. The thing is, to the extent that you're being aggressive, now at level, so level 100, a lot of these big shot pros, they're all about level 100, and anything other than that, they kind of look down upon, right? But for a lot of us regular dudes, that still play on a 120 to 120 to 130 kind of soul level range, a lot of these guys, sometimes you'll run into somebody who'll have 1900 plus vitality. Alright, sorry about that. I had to turn the movie down. It was getting kind of loud. But anyway, and to the extent that these guys have 1900 vitality, you really have to be aggressive. And a lot of times when you do not have a blood bite ring on, that Life Hunt Scythe will basically cause you to kill yourself, right? Because even with block hits, bleed is being built on yourself. And that blood, what is that thing called? The blood shield. It just really doesn't do it. It just really doesn't do anything. Case in point, I used a blood shield for a little while, right? And it only gave me like, I think it was like 200 blood resistance, bleed resistance. Also, I've heard, suggestions that guys would say, why don't you just offhand the gargoyle, I think it's the gargoyle tail axe, which actually has a lot of bleed resistance. But at the same time, I just don't want a ugly gargoyle tail axe hanging out the back, right? It just looks ugly, right? I'd rather have, if I'm going to two-hand something, I would rather have a shield on my back or nothing. I think it looks better, right? And in addition to effectiveness, I kind of want my character to look kind of cool. So, those are the pros and cons. The pros are, you can build bleed and develop it pretty quickly. It's really effective as long as you have sufficient bleed resistance. Because if you guys notice, look at my blood meter, right? I am attacking pretty often with this Life Hunt Scythe. And, my blood meter is basically not doing anything. And that's what it's supposed to do. Especially knowing that you have to be rather aggressive with this Life Hunt Scythe. That's the whole point of this build. The cons, on the other hand, is the super low defense. Super low defense. And in a lot of cases, that low defense bites me in the rear end. Because, I fought the pickaxe bro last week. I fought a couple other guys in the bird and some of the Twitch bros that I know. And in some of those matches, they're like, dude, I'm hitting for mega damage. You know, what's going on with you? And I'm like, dude, I mean, I just have low defense. So that's one of the downsides. Now I'm good with the poise because I have the wolf ring, but I need to recreate this build or find a better way to work it, but with sufficient poise, because the way this build is built, I mean, I just really need help. And you guys will notice these R2s are killing me. Now granted, the R2s are effective on their own, but it doesn't help knowing that my character has low defense. Those are the cons, right? Lack of ring of favor and protection because I am using the slot for the blood bite ring, and the low defense. Other than that, if you can kind of get away with your hot shot life hunt moves, you're good to go, because you will definitely bleed out many opponents, and you wouldn't have to worry about bleeding out yourself because you'll be using the blood bite ring. So if any of you guys got any suggestions, please have your suggestions based upon your own experimentation, right? Because I know a lot of guys will say, all you have to do this, or all you have to do is do that. But they're just talking about, you know, in theory, or they're just talking about what sounds good. But in creating builds, and actually, that was some BS in my opinion, because it looks like I jumped out of that, but I still got hit with the blast. But, I mean, whatever, it is what it is. A lot of guys, especially the experienced guys, you know, they will talk based upon what they know. But sometimes what you think you know and what happens in practice is two totally different things. And experimenting with this build helped me to realize that. I mean, because granted, I knew that the blood bite ring kind of helped with bleed resistance. But with being aggressive and using the life hunt scythe too, no, you kind of need something a little more, especially when you're, you know, above soul level 100, and you know, you're kind of playing against guys who are pretty good. I mean, pretty good with the defense, pretty good with keeping their shields up. You know, you really cannot afford, at least with this weapon, to be aggressive and then have to back off because you're about to kill yourself. Alright, so that's it about the life hunt build. So let's go to his faith build. And actually, this is a nightmare build to fight against, in my opinion. Not necessarily because the tactics are difficult to avoid, because I think if I used another build, you know, with higher defense and probably some other changes, I don't think I would have had the same problem. But, you know, he really makes use of those R2s. I mean, if you guys notice, I mean, this guy's healing. You know, he's using the Tranquil Walk benefit that comes with the Stone Greatsword. He's using the R2s of the Grant, some of the Dragon weapons, some of these other weapons. And, you know, those R2s are really effective, especially some of those Dragon weapons. Right, because in some cases they can hit for like 800 damage depending upon what you're dealing with. And actually, I thought I should have hit that parry right there. I don't know what happened in that case, and I actually don't even know why I couldn't hit him with that backstab, because I actually broke the shoulder. Right, so at this point that I was playing, I was getting super frustrated. I'm like, holy crap, this guy's destroying me with these R2s, and some of these moves I am not able to successfully implement. Alright, so let's see, who is this? Now, who is this? Is this a random? Okay, I think this is just a random. Okay, yeah, that was a random. I was waiting for good old MainG to arrive, and we're back at it. So, like I said before, his build is really good, you know, because it has 50 strength. I'm assuming it has only 30 in faith. And actually, I don't even know if it has 50 strength, right? Because it actually might have 40 strength, because even though some of those strength weapons require 50 strength, he could just two-hand them, right? And actually, I don't remember him one-handing the Grant or some of those Dragon weapons. So actually, he could be just one-handing, well, actually two-handing some of those strength weapons, and actually he might be saving some of those soul levels on something else, because think about it, he's medium rolling, right? So with that medium roll, he actually could stop at, I don't know, I would say 35 endurance and just rock the Hammer ring, right? And save a lot of those other points for, his attunement slots or his vitality. Because if you guys notice, he has replenishment, and he used Great Heal on a number of occasions. Or at least attempted to use Great Heal. So he has at least, well, actually, let me take that back. Replenishment, Great Heal, and I did notice he had a Wrath of the Gods, right? So that's at least 3 attunement slots. So I don't really know the stats, but I'm thinking he's somewhere around 45 in vitality, maybe. 14 in attunement. I think 14 gives you 3 attunement slots, so at least 14 in attunement. At least 40 in strength, because like I said, he don't necessarily need the 50 that you need for the grant, because I mean all he has to do is basically two-hand the grant, for which that's what he did every time I saw him pull it out. And at least 30 in faith. So, I mean, you basically have a lot of damage output potential. And I think the only flaw, which I don't necessarily see it as a flaw, but since we're kind of, and actually I don't know how I didn't get that BS right there. But, I don't necessarily see it as a flaw, because medium rolls are definitely viable, unlike, the opinions of a lot of people. A lot of people say, they're not viable, you can't do anything with it. So, medium rolls are definitely viable. But I would say that's the only downside to it. You don't necessarily have the fast mobility that you would obviously get with the fast roll or Darkwood Grain Ring. Now, shout out to good old Captain Big Nuts, right? And dude, I don't know if you check out my vids, but to the extent that you do, I'm showcasing you to show everyone else what a Cleric build is. Now, this guy probably has demonstrated one of the best versions of a faith build that I have seen. Because if you guys notice, he incorporates a lot of miracles. A lot of miracles. He's using his Crescent Axe. He uses Wrath of the Gods. He uses Emit Force. He's using Lightning Spears. He's using the whole 9. So to the extent that, you do watch the videos, look, dude, please come on back for a Battle of the Build series, because I would love to do a showcase of a pure Cleric, and I think you do a good job demonstrating that pure Cleric build, because actually I fought you on a number of occasions, right? But I didn't really, that was kind of a long time ago. But I remember when I was fighting good old MainG, I said, man, this guy's doing pretty good. Now, even if he used replenishment, right? Even if he attempted to use Tranquil Walk and some of these others, I mean, that's a pure Cleric. He's doing a good job of it. As I've said plenty of times in the past, some of these guys, they call themselves faith builds. But when you really look at what they're doing, I mean, all they're doing is, using Dark Moon Blade and Wrath of the Gods. But a good old Captain Big Nuts there, I mean, he incorporated a lot of those miracles, right? And it wasn't just in that particular case that I'm talking about, because I fought him several times on this particular night, and I mean, he was using a lot of different miracles, and I think that's an awesome demonstration of what a Cleric should do. Alright, so enough about that. Hopefully I'll get a message or a comment from good old Captain Big Nuts. Or actually, I might just message him on PSN. Hopefully he'll go ahead and give me a response so we can go from there. Alright, so we're back at it with good old MainG-Jago's build. And actually, I'm going to have to message him to find out what he's going to call this build. Kind of give it his own name. Put his own spin on it. But like I said before, it is rather effective. I was getting pummeled on this build. I mean, beat down like, I can't even say. I definitely got humbled on this build, because like I said, well, actually, not like I said, but one of the problems that anyone with less than 76 poise will have against some of these stronger builds is that you really need a lot of practice with your toggle escapes. You definitely need practice with your toggle escapes, because if you don't have practice with your toggle escapes, you're going to get R1 spam to death. R1 spam to death. So that's why, in a lot of cases, I don't really have a problem with my builds that only have 53 poise if I'm fighting, one of these tank builds, because I've gotten a lot of toggle escape practice. And I think that was good old Captain Big Nuts once again. But like I said before, so I know a lot of these guys will say, dude, if you're going to fight a tank, you need 76 poise. Not necessarily. Now, if you're not really that comfortable with toggle escapes, you might need it, because think about it. In some cases, you might take 2 hits before you're able to escape the stun lock. And that's why, with a little bit of practice and anticipation, you can actually escape the stun lock after 1 hit. And I'm almost at that point, right? I'm almost there. So just a little bit more practice against some of these heavier weapons, and I'll be able to escape after just 1 hit. And I think, I know some people will say, well, why do you take advantage of glitches? Dude, what's the alternative? To use the toggle escape, or to just sit there and be a victim by a stun locking ultra greatsword user? Yeah, I doubt it. Right? So until they do something different, I'll be toggle escaping to prevent myself from being stun locked as best as I can. So that's basically it with regard to his build. It has a lot of positives with those effective R2s. He makes effective use of a lot of these strong weapons, including the Grant, the Stone Greatsword, to kind of add a little pressure on your opponent. With regard to cons, like I said before, medium rolls are definitely viable, but the only con that I can really think of is the fact that he can't fast roll or Darkwood Grain Ring. Now, here's another one of those situations where I'm like, dude, what can I do against this build? He's got replenishment, he's got heal, he's got the whole 9. So not only do I have the problem that I've already stated with regard to my build, but this guy has constant vitality rejuvenation, right? So I was kind of like at a rock and a hard place. Now, if I had to work this build again, I would basically pull out my fast rolling Faith build, and actually it's a Soul Lair build that I put together. And that fast rolling Faith build has Great Magic Barrier, and it focuses on being an anti-caster. Right, that's the focus. I use Great Magic Barrier on that build and Vow of Silence. You guys notice? See? He's replenishing himself. I can't do anything. Right, so that's about it. So, like I said before, thanks again to good old MainG for the awesome demonstration of your build. I really appreciate it. And to everybody else out there, if you guys have a unique build, I'm not looking for katana builds unless you're kind of doing something groovy like a dual katana or something, for which I kind of have something in store. But like I said, no pyro builds for the most part. Pyros are not unique. I get tons of pyro builds. But if you guys have a unique build idea, go ahead and send me a message or comment in the section, and we can arrange something. Well, alright guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the more recent installment of the Battle of the Build series. So until next time, Martyrs Brigade.